Sorry about that, guys. We are back in action. It's the best of 3 quarterfinals between Cube and Dan. It's a PvP. We actually don't see too many of these here in Starbow. And big shout out to Dan before we do introductions. We got to cast him last week. He put up a pretty darn good fight, but he unfortunately was taken out by his teammate in the first round of Starbow, so we didn't get to see a lot of him. Fingers are crossed we get to see a better showing today. But without further ado, spawning at the top left corner of the map, playing for the team Gosu, the clan Gosu at the very least, it's going to be the yellow Protoss player Cube. And his opponent in the lower right. He's red, he's Protoss. From EST, it's Dan. I don't know if you would want to, I'm just going to ask anyways. I think he's in here, right? What a slacker. Enjoy your food. Anyways, PvP, one of the big things here for Beast, you guys might think like, man, this is so BS, why would he watch his opponents? It's like cheating. Well, a lot of people say that a lot of the times, but realistically, guys, if you're hitting the brackets, you'll be watching streams anyways. A PvP doesn't tell him anything he wouldn't know for TVP. He's just kind of chilling in the game. So before anyone gets their knickers in a twist, don't freak out. This is actually more regular than you guys might realize. A lot of the times too, oh, hang on. What is this? Regenerative mineral field? Okay, so I saw this last time actually. I completely forgot. This just completely blew my mind for a moment because I was like, whoa, what's that yellow thing over there? There's a game we cast in Starbow. Oh gosh, I wish I could remember who was playing. I want to say Tefl or something, but it was a Zerg player who actually used lurkers over here to hit the mineral lines over here. It was really cool to watch happen. But I've not seen anyone use these regenerative mineral fields, so I'm not sure. Like, I'm assuming they're just temporary blockers that you can take out, but do they regenerate, like, after a certain amount of minutes, or do the minerals go back up? Is it an infinite supply of resources? I have no idea. Oh, this probe just got gangbustered. But, okay, so for Dan, he's going with some pretty standard stuff. He's got Dragoons on the way, he's got the Cadrian Crystal finishing up, but Cube is taken in a completely different direction. He's going for a Stargate. This would most likely be for Sentinels. Now, I talked a little bit about Sentinels before. I didn't get to do you didn't get to see too much with it this tournament, but you will get to see, there's some things on our YouTube channel with a lot of Sentinel usage. By the way, we've cast, or I at the very least, have cast most of the Starbow tournaments to date, so you can look up a lot of past games on our YouTube channel. Small little plug, youtube.com/mapcontrolgo. But Sentinels are a really unique unit. It's, first off, I didn't know this, someone pointed out to me recently, the actual graphic of a Sentinel, like you'll see it if it gets built, is the top half of a, or sorry, the bottom half of a sentry combined with the top half of a robo facility. I hope he makes one so we can see, yeah, there you go, Sentinel on the way. But this unit, it's got low damage. It's like a sentry, it streams out an attack. Hell, the actual attack animation, it looks just like a sentry. It's not a lot of damage, but the null ward ability it has is kind of like a floating spider mine. It's something that hovers in the air, you arm it, after 3 seconds it blinks like crazy, and if there's any units targetable nearby, it goes onto them. And just like a spider mine, it can be targeted, it can be shot down. I think it's got like 40 or 80 health or something, nothing too crazy. I think it's 40 health actually, just thinking on that. But it can definitely do some harass in a very nice way. There we go, the Sentinel. I'm going to try and show you guys. So, it's the top half of a robo facility on the top of a, on the bottom half's a sentry, I guess. You guys can kind of see that, right? I don't know. Anyways, speaking of robo facilities, I've got the robo bay on the way here, or not the robo bay, sorry, the well, we do have a robo bay. Okay, never mind. I was gonna say it's a very quick reaver to come out, but there's the null ward being placed down, so it kind of zones out units. It creates a little bit of damage. It hits pretty hard too, but where's this thing over here? So you guys can see top half of a robo bay, a robo facility. So it makes the Sentinel a stupid looking unit, but it's unique and it's original, so props to the makers of Starbow for doing this. Anyways, as we can see, the damage on it is not exactly anything insane. Doesn't even get the probe, comes back for the probe, but costs him his life. Oh, it's got the death animation of an Oracle too. It's an all-in-one, all-purpose unit. One of the key things he saw from this though is the fact that a Reaver is going to be coming out. I mean, with that with the Sentinel, he scouted the Robo Bay. There's only really one thing you make from this, and that's, well, you go for Gravitic Drive. That's given every single time to make the warp prisms faster. but you don't really just leave it there. Like, it's always going to be a Sentinel follow-up, or sorry, a Reaver follow-up. And right now for Cube, one of the big questions is, like, what can he do to deal with this? Reavers hit so hard. They attack with this monstrously... They basically shoot a Baneling. They have a projectile that is essentially a Baneling, guys. There's your context. So as it gets dropped into the base, it can definitely pick off a huge cluster of probes with relative ease. I believe Null Ward... I don't think it can target air units. Okay, it doesn't say on the tooltip. I'm pretty sure it doesn't target air units, though, so unfortunately can't really do anything about this by placing Null Wards down. The two up here are about to expire, but it's not like Dan's moving out of the base anytime soon. Oh, ironically enough, as he moves out, Null Ward's going to go off on him. So as you guys can see, it's a fair amount of damage. But again, that was only 2, and it does this massive slow. And it's worth noting, the slow actually is quote-unquote friendly fire. Oh, a Corsair, an interesting choice. Combined with the Dark Templar. This, by the way, has the same ability as the Oracle to provide detection. If he had to worry about his opponent coming at him with Dark Templar, Cube could easily use this as a... It unfortunately roots them in place, so it's not mobile detection like an Oracle, but still can provide some detection. Corsairs are not exactly the best anti-air units in the game. They're meant to deal with clusters of like Mutalisks and such, so they attack very, very low, but incredibly, as you can see, incredibly fast. They also have some splash damage associated with them, but that's something we're not going to see come into effect, I feel. For Cube, though, he's got a lot of gateways, he's got Zealots, he's got some Dragoons on the way, he's making his way. He's got a natural up way before his opponent, and Cube's Reavers are incredibly late. I'm wondering why the second one took so long to get out. Maybe it was just supply blocked or something, but this is a very, very delayed attack coming his way. Now, he could just... Oh, sorry, thank you, chat has updated me. Null Wards can attack air, so that's kind of cool. But anyways, this attack is delayed. The Null Ward going off slows these Dragoons in a way that the Dark Templar can start getting back on top of them. Dark Templar is like the one unit in the game that hasn't been tinkered with or toyed with at all. Still hits incredibly hard, still cloaked, and still moves around at a relatively fast pace. But Dan needs to go over here with this. He needs to get some harass done. Cubis gets... he's set up around the mineral lines. He's pretty well sorted to deal with this. Templar are out too. He doesn't quite have Warp Tech, or sorry, not Warp Tech, what am I saying here? Storm Tech researched. But that's okay. Storm, by the way, hits much harder in STARBOW than regular StarCraft guys. And as you can see, the Reavers are essentially these little Baneling projectiles that get shot out, do a ton of AoE. He's got to unload these, so he's going to lose the Warp Prism. Oh, like I said, it doesn't have the most damage, but it attacks so quick that the Corsair actually ends up dealing with that in the end. Dan coming across the map with his Dragoons does manage to actually get past both Null Wards. I don't know how that's possible, but Dark Templar on their asses. These Dragoons cannot sit still for too long. Gonna pick off the Sentinels. I actually really like that move. But backing away from this, has to be careful. Again, more Null Wards waiting for him. Oh, this Dragoon's gonna walk right into it. This is gonna slow them, allowing the Zealots to connect. And Dan's gonna lose his Dragoons. Really, really unfortunate. Does go for the recall move, so... I talked about this a little bit before, if you guys missed out on it. Nexi, I don't believe Nexi is correct, but Nexuses do have this recall ability, but as you can see, it's like a 15-second or something arm time before you can use the units again, so it's a really long delay. But it's used greatly in those sort of like clutch situations of get the hell out of Dodge alive. A couple pylons coming down here. Again, supply block imminent, but not quite on the way for Cube. He's got a pretty nice army lead at this point, double that of his opponent. But Cube's gonna find himself hard pressed to push into Reavers. Dragoons are still pretty good. Reavers, okay, so what we saw back there, guys, were the ineffective use of Reavers. They were taken out too quickly, they didn't get a lot of shots off, and they didn't get to do any worker harass, which is really unfortunate. Like, for Cube, he reacted to that nicely, but for Dan, as soon as he saw the Corsair was on his ass, he should have just dropped in the mineral lines and tried to get as much damage as possible. But Reavers can still be utilized behind these frontline pushes quite nicely. They're incredibly retardedly slow, though, so they're not exactly the most mobile form of artillery, but still hit really darn hard. It's so cool that they have this model in the game. I wonder if the STARBOW guys did this, like the Sentinel, where they butchered up and made their own unique one, or if they imported it from something, but looks pretty darn cool. Third base coming out of Cube. He's in such a good spot this game, and Archon's on the way, or not on the way, but Archons are here to stay. They've got a lot of shields, they do a lot of damage. Zealots, they do have the charge upgrade, and, well, between that and some storm damage, this is going to be a little bit difficult for Dan to deal with. Dan, of course, is more concerned with getting his own third base up at the moment. It's really important he doesn't fall too far behind economically. Warp Tech, again, is something that doesn't come too often into play, but even rarer than that are these weapon upgrades that both players have secured at this point. And just some gimmicky stuff being discussed here in chat. No, Null Wards and Sentinels were not in Brood War. Scouts, Corsairs, Carriers, I think were the only air units. I could be mistaken. Well, I mean, like, of a Stargate, because of course you saw the shuttles and what have you. But Sentinels are unique to Starbow with their design and concept entirely. And that's what they gotta give props again to the creators of Starbow. They used a lot of elements from both StarCraft 2 and Brood War and still managed to make their own and keep the game relatively balanced. Of course, this game can't be anything close to balanced. There's been a lot of updates and changes though. And that's what's kind of cool about the game. Like, there's like been weekly updates from the developers. They cast their own tournaments. They're setting up that Starbow Invitational. I mean, they really, really want to make sure this is a well-handled, community-driven game. And it took them a while to get the recognition they deserve, but it's been a pretty cool trip so far, and I'm excited to see where Starbow continues to go. The super hype circle jerk train has definitely died off a little bit, which I think is going to actually help the PR of Starbow a little bit, but we'll see how this goes. Reaver kills are going to be massive here. He's going to have to drop these and die, though. I mean, this is sacrificial lamb business. Has actually managed just to barely skirt past that. Oh my god, though!
Monster kill!
Those probs got destroyed by that hit. So good. And of course, you have to actually build scarabs to attack guys. They cost some resources, not too much, of course, but have a fairly long build time. And if they take, as we see, not exactly the most reliable rate of fire. Okay, he straight up canceled that Nexus. I mean, I guess it would have eventually died to the Sentinels, but Sentinels don't have a ton of damage associated with them. Warp Prism barely dodges that storm, tries to get out of here. There's a cannon waiting, though. It looks like he might lose both of these Reavers. Has to be so careful with his control. Dodging around the Dragoons, dodging around the cannon. And of course, Cube knows that this threat is still imminent. It's still here nearby. But, regardless, has seemed to have ignored it for the time being. Probes are going to get pulled here. Looks like they will not all quite get destroyed. Some kills going to go off for sure, but again, the Warp Prism with its gravitic drive is quite speedy. Going to go for the kill on the Dragoon instead of fully retreating. Dragoon, of course, trying to focus on that Warp Prism. Stuck behind the mineral lines, though. Dan's going to pull a little bit more back to deal with this. Or, not Dan, sorry, Cube to deal with Dan's aggression, but the Warp Prism does get picked off with both the Reavers inside, and that is really unfortunate. But at the end of the day, got about 18 workers between those random harassments. Not too bad, but still a base down to his opponent is Dan. He's got his own Templar. This is something you don't see in StarCraft 2 ever, and this is what's really cool. Freaking Storm versus Storm. Charge Lot versus Charge Lot. Reavers versus Archons. Cube's army's still much, much larger than Dan's, but look at these chokes. It's not like he can necessarily push in. Neither player wants to, like, Dan can't push out and Cube can't push in, because if storms go down on the bridge, players are going to die. That's what it boils down to. Reavers are here as well to add a lot more splash damage onto this. I mean, it's weird to consider. A combination of the Null Wards combined with the Archons give Cube a slight edge as far as total area of effect damage goes, but the Reavers are more reliable for damage in that regard. Null Wards are going to be soaked up, and looks like we got some Storm Drops. Whoa, coming in behind enemy lines. That's actually a really cool move out of Cube. I like this. But moving away from the bridge, getting out of this. Some storms are going to come down. He does have to be careful. Eats a huge storm here. Eats a second storm. Storms from Dan also going out. But Cube is going to take the better end of that engagement. Dan doesn't lose anything too crazy, but takes a little bit more damage on his units. Some more pepper, if you will. Zealots charging into the front lines, and Reavers are trying to be micro through this Warp Prism, but that's not going to happen for too much longer. Unfortunately, the damage is not being done to the necessity that he needs it. The Dragoons are just overwhelming Dan. Game 1, good game. Will go to Cube.